This mansion is a memorial of one of the three greatest presidents of the United States, whose political career was faithful to every sentence and word of the United States Declaration of Independence, a well-known statement on human rights, and even led the U.S. through the Civil War to protect the fundamental right of human. 100 years later, the U.S. was divided again by the war in Vietnam. This time, the war is meaningless, and that's why all the monuments are upward at the sky. Vietnam War Monument is a cold black wall stretching in gloom. The war has resulted in not only 60,000 deaths of American youth, but also a crucial split within the U.S. However, the human rights principles of the Founding Fathers still remain in those U.S. citizens such as Luther King, Jane Fonda, Morrison, and Tom Harkin, Don Luce, the two main characters of this film. Just like Abraham Lincoln, they have a strong belief that whoever stands in the other side of the war must also be guaranteed by the most basic right. What they have done following their heart leave the footprint in others' heart. One day in July 2010, there were two special visitors from the U.S. coming to Công Đảo Island. One is Tom Harkin, the senator of the U.S. Senate, and the other is journalist Don Luce. Together with them were some former political prisoners who were being held captive here. They returned to this island exactly 40 years after the day they uncovered a terrible secret and exposed it to the light together, which not only affected the rest of their life, but also contributed to a change of the outcome of the war. The secret was the prison within prison system called Tiger Cage. In 1940, the French built a discreetly captive zone which has extremely narrow prison cells, where prisoners ate, slept, and urinated in the same place. Above is the pathway for jailers to watch them. Besides the jailers, no one was aware of the secret tiger cage. The prisoners who were brought into that vicious system seemed to have no chance of coming back alive.
At that time, I was a staff member of a congressional delegation to South Vietnam. I had read a book written by Mr. Don Luce called Vietnam Unheard Voices. So soon after arriving, I met Mr. Don Luce, an American with a deep love of Vietnam and its people. I knew that through Mr. Luce I would get a different side of the story of what was happening in Vietnam. One evening, he brought a young man to my hotel room. He told me this story about how he had been a prisoner in the tiger cage. But I had heard of the tiger cages because other delegations had passed about them, but told they did not exist. So this young man said to me, "I don't know if I can trust you, but I trust Mr. Luce." He said, "But you must go find the tiger cages and tell the story." So I said to this young man, "How can I find them?" So this young man drew me pictures, and he said, "You must look for different signs that will tell you where they are." So that young man, Mr. Cowan Wing Loy, drew me pictures. And then, I'm show you now, 40 years later, these are the original drawings of Mr. Lloyd on how to...
Đây là những bản vẽ nguyên gốc của ông Lợi đã hướng dẫn tôi cách tìm ra trụ cột.
You really he hand drew these.
Anh Lợi, anh còn nhớ là anh có hướng dẫn cho tôi cách mà tìm ra những cái dấu hiệu, những cái bảng này lộ trình như thế nào?
We had to say clearly in what situation did we manage to achieve the map, and its meaning, how was it drawn, and how using the map could help us to find the way to the tiger caves. And unless we explain clearly, people will keep on questioning and making negative rumors. Today, let me report directly to Mr. Lưu Văn Nhi.
Đây là cái trung tâm của Đại Tha Vây.
This was where Colonel Ve worked. We have met him here. Ve was very good at speaking English because he studied in the UK. Look at that photo here. This is the Congressman Hopkins, Congressman Anderson, and that is Tom Harkin, who was a student at that time. And here is Colonel Ve. Ve offered us some coffee in a cup. Could you please give me that coffee filter?
Nhưng mà có ở trong cái ly, nhưng mà anh cho tôi mượn cái đó, cái cà phê. Vâng. Cho người ta biết. Vâng. Vâng. Vì lúc đó thì Đại Tha Vây để nhiều cà phê quá.
At that time, Colonel Ve added too much coffee, so the coffee did not pour down. We waited and waited. Rough. Then 30 minutes later, it took a long time.
Rồi đó thì theo cái bản đồ của anh Lôi, trong tôi xin đi.
Using the map drawn by Lợi, we went into the camp 4. We knew there was a tiny door there, and we walked in.
Và trong tôi đến đây, và trong tôi biết là phải đi bên này, rồi có ở trong này thì có một cái cửa nhỏ, rồi trong tôi đi vào.
So remember I told you how they took us to Camp 6, then another camp. The time was getting late, we were being rushed, and I said we want to go to one more camp, and we came to this one. So Don Luce is here, and Don and I came, and at that time, imagine the gates here are bigger than this, and they kind of open up and they cover this area. Both of these gates cover this area. So if you weren't paying attention, you would think that this wall is that wall. Maps. Where'd Lloyd go? Where is it? So I had Lloyd's maps, and I looked at the map, and I saw the signs that he put on the map. But on Lloyd's map, there was a small door. We looked along the wall, and there's no door. And then Don and I walked out here, just the two of us, and we saw these gates. And then we saw something was behind the gates, standing here, but everybody else was inside. So Don and I walked down this pathway, and we saw this little door. So we say, this must be it. So we came back, we saw the congressman, and I said to Congressman Hawkins, when we come out, go behind the gate. Go down the passageway behind the gate.
Ở trong này thì có một cái cửa nhỏ, rồi xong tôi đi vào. Và ở đó thì
This place has a tiny door. We walked through it. There were some sweet potatoes being cultivated inside, which according to they was water spinach. Because I was an agricultural engineer, I said that there were sweet potatoes indeed. Then we argued with each other whether there was sweet potato or water spinach. Inside the prison, there was a jailer hearing Colonel Ve's voice.
And so this is the famous vegetable garden. And he's still growing vegetables. Somebody is here. So we come down here. I am in the lead, and I'm standing right here by this door. And Colonel Vay and Don Luce and other people are coming down where you just came. But now, I asked Colonel Vay, where's this door go? He said, no, you can't. You have to go back around, go over to another prison, because this door is permanently locked. Now, as I later learned, if we had done that, we would never see the tiger cages because there's another wall over there. I didn't know that then. So I just said to Colonel Vay, why can't we go through the door? Colonel Vay is standing here, and here's what he said. He has a baton. Can't go through the door. Permanently locked. Permanently locked. Holding his baton, and all of a sudden, I think a guard on the other side heard his voice, thought the colonel was coming, he better open the door. And so we rushed through the door. Now we can't get it open again.
Just a door and a few steps. But that was the leap of 100 years into human civilization. 40 years ago, what they saw was the sign of hell, with extreme stench of blood and prisoner bodies covered by their own faces and urines. Don Luce reported in the New Village Voice newspaper about the reactions of the prisoners when seeing American visitors. The prisoner looked up at us as if they were wondering about the possibly new methods of torturing we were about to practice on them. All the photos here captured on July 5, 1970 were marked into history. They are more powerful than any troop of 1,000 soldiers and horses, because the photos of monk Thích Quảng Đức burning himself to death, Napalm Girl in Tây Ninh, General Nguyễn Ngọc Loan executed a prisoner in the middle of a Saigon street. They make the world angry and force the U.S. government to end the war. He told me to take a photo. Then he gave me a magazine showing the photo of Mr. I don't remember his name, with Mrs. Shao. Meanwhile, in Nguyễn Dung village, there was this woman who worked for the Philippines. One noon, she told me that people called the woman in the photo Mrs. Hai. She looked thin in that photo, so I guess she might not come back. 20 years after the Vietnam War, Don Luce and Tom Harkin had a chance to come back to Vietnam. One of the first person they wanted to meet was Mrs. Shao, whose real name is Nguyễn Thị Chỉ.
Well, and I never returned to Vietnam until 1995. Well, I got busy with my life, married, raising a family. I'd kind of kept in touch through Don Luce, who kept going back and forth with Loy, got married. But I took this wonderful picture of Ba Sao. Ba Sao. She's in my pictures. And I thought she was quite old then, in 1970. 25 years later, she comes to this reunion. And again, something I'll never forget. So I went in and there's all these, and I gave Loy a big hug. And I remember the first thing Loy said to me, he says, "I'm alive, I'm alive." and it's such a warm, wonderful thing. But I walked in and Ba Sao was sitting in the front row. Now she's really old. I don't know how old she was. Nobody really knew. But she must have been pretty close to 100 at that time. And so Don took me out. And of course, she was blind. She was blind in the tiger cages. Part of her blindness was caused by the lime that they were throwing in her eyes and stuff. So if she was in her 60s then, or probably in her 60s at that time, but she was an anti-war activist. So anyway, she's sitting there in the front row. 25 years later, I walk in there, and Dawn Luce brings me up. She's blind, but she knows who I am because she had talked to me 25 years before. I had her voice on the tape. And so I reached down. She sat there. I grabbed her hand. Dawn Luce said, "This is Mr. Harkin. He was in The Guy in the Tiger Cage. You know the story."
This was Boss Al when
He said, and he's come back for this reunion. And she said, "What took you so long?" What took you so long?
Why did it take you so long to come back? It was not a question. It was in fact a yearning confession to reunite one's soulmate. Because even though she was blind, Mrs. Shaw was still able to witness an act full of humanity. When there was some person, though standing in enemy side, still accepted the risk of being accused for the most serious crime at the time, betrayal, to protect the human rights of the captive prisoners. And in the cell number 5, I was with Thích Hạnh Tuệ and Đỗ Văn Năm. This is the picture taken at the tiger cage. This is me, this is Hạnh Tuệ, and this is Đỗ Văn Năm. We live together here. Here is the story behind this photo. On July 5th, 1970, as I was laying on the ground, I heard the bell, which was actually just a can tied to a string. We were always trying to keep track of everything happening around. So when I heard the bell, I looked through a hole on the door and found out there was a group of people coming in. They all dressed in suit and ties. That was kind of strange, so I observed them more carefully until I realized that they were American. Then, I informed the other prisoner that the Americans were coming, so they should be prepared. When the group of Americans walked about the cells, they saw Thích Hạnh Tuệ wearing a cassock of the monk. On January 8, 1972, monk Thích Hạnh Tuệ died in tiger cage. I lost a dear and beloved brother. An exceptionally strong, brave, and respectful man to me.
Pictures, as you know, is better than 1,000 words, and these pictures spoke a powerful story about who was in these tiger cages. The Buddhist monk, who, by the way, who was buried, as you know, on Kansan, was very powerful. He said, "I'm here for no other reason than I spoke out for peace." And he said something, they can shackle me, they can torture me, but I still speak out for peace. It's very powerful.
Thích Hạnh Tuệ had never had a chance to meet those Americans appearing at the prison that day. Those involving in the incidents of Côn Đảo tiger case passed away. Mrs. Shaw died in 2011 at the age of 93. Yet, their images after each appearance has made a great impact on the human's conscience, and they will still remember after every time a crime against humanity was discovered in some secret prisons. Our film crew were warmly welcomed by Don Luce as his old friends because Vietnam was a part of his life. Lots of memorabilia in his house support that statement. Don Luce graduated with a bachelor degree in agricultural economics at Vermont University in 1957. The next year, he got the Master of Agricultural Development at Cornell University. Since November 1958, he had worked in Vietnam for 13 years as a volunteer, a hero protecting the weak. Besides volunteering works, he also wrote some books, produced documentary films with ABC News, CBS Morning News, and Good Morning America, wrote articles for New York Times, Washington Post, Newsday. It's not difficult to find Tom Harkin's workplace because it's Capitol Hill, where the Iowa senator served as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. After serving in the U.S. Navy as a jet pilot, Tom moved to Washington, D.C. in 1969 to participate in the assistant group for Iowa congressmen. After exposing to tiger cage on Côn Đảo Island, Tom had to attend the congressional hearings and trials and was fined for betrayal with threatening words, "You will never find a job here again." But in 1974, Tom Harkin came back after winning the run for U.S. House of Representatives. Tom Harkin's memory about Vietnam is not only just a tiger cage. In 1995, right after the establishment of diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Vietnam, Senator Tom Harkin came to Hanoi. In 2010, one of the reasons why he came to Vietnam is to evaluate the dioxin contamination level and see what he can do to help the victims of the Agent Orange. During the Vietnam War, there was another war within the U.S., and Tom Harkin participated in that war with no hesitation by joining the anti-war marches up to 500,000 people to protest against the Vietnam War. The climax of anti-war movement was the protest of Kent State University students, Ohio, on May 4, 1970, being suppressed by the National Guard of the U.S. As a result, the shooting killed 4 students and wounded 9.
Subtitles underneath.
Sorry. It's interesting you're here because a lot of people felt that Kent State helped end the war in Vietnam. Who knows? Terrible, terrible, terrible thing. So, you can see what my feelings are. You know, I'd seen my mother who died, I'd seen her, but I'd really never experienced death very significantly. And to see students shot on a college campus was, well, it's the worst day of my life.
Because of Vietnam's peace, red bloodstream of 4 white youth poured down the green law of an American university campus. National Register of Historic Places website, NRHP, stated this event.
Calling the students.
This area is considered nationally significant, given its broad effect in causing the largest student strike in the United States history, affecting public opinion about the Vietnam War. The Kent State shootings have changed the public's perception of war, from Congress to each American family. 4 students being killed in the shooting war: Jeffrey Miller, Sandra Schur, Allison Cross, and William Schroeder. The stone memorials for the event of May 4th, made of natural granite, was built by architect Bruno Ass from Chicago with the meaning: learn from the past some important lesson for the future. The imposing stone memorial stand like soldier, guarding the resting place of the 4 students in peace.
We wanted to stop the war in Vietnam. We wanted to stop the killing of our friends, the soldiers, the American soldiers. These were our friends, our family members. They didn't want to go to Vietnam. They were forced to go. And we knew that the American war was genocide. And it was an international crime committed by our government. And we knew that as citizens of America, we had to bring the war home. We had to stop the war, and that's why we protested.
Nowadays, the U.S. still cope with other war, but no longer put the war back to our country as 40 years ago. There is always peace-loving citizens who always respect human rights. This country has learned how to not repeat the mistake. In the article with the headline, "Farewell to Vietnam" in the Village Voice newspaper issued on May 27, 1971, Don Luce wrote, "I believe it's time for me and for all foreigners to leave Vietnam. I believe that peace will come to Indochina only when we foreigners leave. I shall not come back until Vietnam is truly independent." When sincerely writing those words, he should have known that not only Vietnamese, but people in anywhere on earth do not want to leave someone who always listens to the voices of humankind's heart, as Don Luce and Tom Harkin.